Manchester City ended up dropping 2 points. How crucial could that be?
That scoreboard pressure the Gunners applied with their impressive win over Villa probably played its part, but I do think that's quite a damaging one as far as Manchester City are concerned. I wasn't surprised that Arsenal won. It did get me thinking, do you know what? Quite possibly they could get this job done.
But to beat them in that manner, I thought was particularly impressive.
A week ago, they were under so much pressure and City are going to come and get you and they're going to overtake you. Now it's like Arsenal, they've got this cushion now, and my goodness me, it's amazing how one game can change things. But to win in the way they did, I think psychologically puts them back on track.
Let's be completely honest about it. Liverpool against Leeds was a tough watch. Liverpool missed a great chance. Hugo Ekitike missing a sitter from about 5 yards out.
I think the big winner was probably Mo Salah watching in his hotel at AFCON, because he can't come back soon enough at the moment for Liverpool. I think this is a decision that ultimately has been taken by Chelsea. It looked untenable. Chelsea have decided it's untenable.
He is the physical embodiment of the squad. Young, a little bit naive sometimes, learning on the job. He has potential.
You're right, I think his stock certainly is higher on the way out than it is when he came in, and the message coming out of Stamford Bridge when Maresca's departure was announced was very much, our model will not change, so whoever comes in is going to have to adhere to it.
But I think they want a yes man in the job, don't they, really?
What do these owners want? Do they want trophies, and do they want them as soon as they can possibly get them? Or is it actually just... Is it just a business? Is it just a hedge fund? Chelsea Football Club should be chasing the top trophies. And the way they're going with this model, it's all about, it looks great on the balance sheet, but what are they going to win in the next 5 years?
I'm not sure that that's going to hold with the fan base that's used to winning a lot of trophies. And it's all right saying, well, it's a different model now. Everything's different. It's a different Chelsea in 2026 than it was in 2006. But the fans still want to win. Hello and welcome to Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook, and back alongside us is the former Chelsea fullback, FA Cup winner, it is Scott Minto. Now, yesterday we did put out an emergency podcast because of the sacking, mutual consent, walking away of, resignation, whatever you want to call it, of Enzo Maresca. And that is still available, but also that portion of the show is contained in this podcast as well. So you don't need to flick back just yet. You can hear that in the next few minutes. But we put that out early because of the reaction to the sacking of Enzo Maresca yesterday. So today, this part of the podcast will focus on what happened last night on New Year's Day, and then we'll get into the Maresca stuff and what's going to happen over the course of the weekend in just a moment. The Crookmeister is here. Hello, Crookmeister.
Good morning.
You look like you're in Dubai or something like that. Where actually are you?
I'm in London Bridge. Obviously, we got a big show today, 10 till 1, and one of us actually turned up for work. Didn't do it from home.
Yes, I'm doing it from home. Special privileges. But it does look like it's a lot warmer than where you were yesterday when we recorded the other part of the podcast, which is upcoming, where you look like a polar bear wrapped up against the cold.
Yes, indeed. Yes, I'm certainly less red-nosed, shall we say.
Red face, though, for some of those who played last night. For example, those who missed some big chances. Erling Haaland missed a cracking chance for Manchester City against Sunderland. Robin Roos was in good form, but actually I thought they missed chances, Manchester City, in what was probably the best game of the night. Manchester City ended up dropping 2 points. How crucial could that be in the title race? Because Arsenal took on Aston Villa earlier in the week, beat them quite comfortably, and have now stretched their lead at the top as a result.
Yeah, and actually, kudos to you for this, because you predicted that if Arsenal beat Aston Villa, then Manchester City would go on and drop points. And equally, you said if Arsenal didn't beat Villa, you fancied City to win the game. So that scoreboard pressure the Gunners applied with their impressive win over Villa probably played its part. Obviously, I lost Nico Gonzalez to injury as well. That was partly made up for by the return of Rodri. But you're right, they were just not clinical enough, Manchester City. And actually, there were times in the game when Sunderland looked the more likely to open the scoring, particularly before half-time. Credit to them, still without half a dozen players because of AFCON, and still unbeaten at home and finding a way to grind out results. But I do think that's quite a damaging one as far as Manchester City are concerned.
I thought defensively they were absolutely brilliant, Sunderland. They were really good. They put bodies in front of the line. Mukiele was strong. He was fierce. He was massive. He made himself a real presence. I thought Brian Brobby up the other end of the pitch was so muscular and strong. There was one particular instant when he went in a foot race with Ruben Diaz and he beat him and he shrugged him off and he showed how much strength and power he had. It was disappointing he couldn't find the finish for the only reason that it would have been a brilliant, brilliant goal. But they showed real intent in that match, and the crowd reaction to the full-time whistle, 0-0 against Manchester City, preserving that home record, I thought was terrific as well. That was the best game of what was a bad bunch on Thursday night. Let's be completely honest about it. Liverpool against Leeds was a tough watch. Liverpool missed a great chance. Hugo Ekitike missing a sitter from about 5 yards out, whereas somehow, inexplicably, he gets a pass because he's been so brilliant since arriving to Anfield. But he misses a chance where it hits the sort of side of his head and goes across the goal rather than in the goal. And everyone was like, what the hell happened there? It took about two or 3 seconds for people to realise exactly what had happened. But they lacked a little bit of a cutting edge against the Leeds side, who also deserve credit for the way that they defended.
Yeah, they do. And obviously, Arne Slot complained afterwards about a couple of penalty decisions that didn't go Liverpool's way. But to be fair, he then admitted that wasn't why they didn't win the game. Again, like Manchester City, they weren't clinical enough. I think it was a really disjointed Liverpool performance. Actually, listening to Stuart Pearce on commentary, he was getting frustrated by the slow pace of the home side's play. And obviously, that's in stark contrast to what they were doing last year when they won the title. I think the big winner was probably Mo Salah watching in his hotel at AFCON, because he can't come back soon enough at the moment for Liverpool.
Well, the big winner wasn't Manchester United, because Leeds now unbeaten in 6 after holding Liverpool, but also resting Dominic Calvert-Lewin for that game at the weekend. He came on and scored, actually. And if he had just held his run slightly, that would have been given. So it would have been 7 straight games in which he'd scored. He's a real threat. Manchester United are going to have to be very careful on Sunday.
Yeah, they are. And again, you look at the league table, we're halfway through now. United are 6th, and you'd say at the start of the season, do you know what, that's progress. But you look at all those missed points and spurned opportunities. Another one against Wolves. If they just done their job and won that game, they'd be 4th at the halfway stage. They'd be above Chelsea, above Liverpool. But this is a really difficult game. Leeds unbeaten in 6. You mentioned Dominic Calvert-Lewin's form. The atmosphere, I know you'll be there for talkSPORT, is going to be electric and very hostile. However, United have only lost one of their last 19 games in the Premier League against Leeds. So the head-to-head record certainly isn't in the home side's favour. And I've just got a suspicion that United might be able to grind out a result here. I'm not saying they'll win, but I think they can avoid defeat.
Yeah, wow, that's a big step, isn't it? Manchester United might avoid defeat against a team who everyone thought were relegation candidates at the beginning of the season. But then again, Chelsea got absolutely pummeled there. So there's every chance it'll be a very difficult game for Manchester United. I have to say, in terms of Leeds United, they've done a brilliant job. But you also do like leaning on these historical records. The last time you did so was against Aston Villa. How did that go?
You remind me.
Badly. Talking of things that went badly, the night of turgid games really came to its nadir at the Brentford G-Tech Community Stadium. What an absolute stinker. I mean, Spurs away end chancing boring Tottenham. Disillusionment absolutely clear. It was a dismal night. Spurs didn't have a shot on target until the 3rd minute of stoppage time. It's not an easy place to go, Brentford. It isn't. But you're coupling this in with recent performances against Crystal Palace, which was really hard to watch as well.
Yeah.
And actually, entertainment value is very, very low for the Tottenham Hotspur supporters. On the flip side of that, you can say they've picked up 4 points from 2 tough away games, and they've made themselves very, very difficult to beat. But the Tottenham fans are not seeing it that way.
No, they're not. And obviously the issue they've got is they've got a home game against Sunderland this weekend. And you look at how well Sunderland played against Manchester City, the threat they posed on the counter-attack. I think if they play like that at Spurs, I can see an away win here. And actually, I was just looking at the bookmakers' odds. They're around about 3-1, Sunderland to win at Spurs. I think that's a massive price because Tottenham arguably more comfortable playing this style away from home than they are at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where the atmosphere can turn a little bit toxic at times. And if they try and play the same way as they did at Brentford, I think those fans will quickly be on their backs, and Sunderland are just the type of team who can take advantage of that.
Yeah, certainly they've got attacking threats and they're pretty robust. Their performances away from home haven't been anywhere near as stellar as their ones at the Stadium of Light. So it's sort of the two sort of the two negatives meeting together, isn't it? Sunderland's away form and Tottenham's home form. But if you look at the difference in Thomas Frank's team, all the defensive metrics have started to go upwards, right, in comparison to the last season and Ange Postecoglou's team. He had to do that because they were so bad defensively. He had to do that because they were losing far too many games. And I just wonder whether or not the Tottenham fans can sort of deal with this period of transition. Because if you look at social media last night, there's no love for this. There's no love for these performances. There's no love for this manager. There's no love for this team. And when Vicario goes over to the away end at the end of the game, Thomas Frank goes over there away to the away end, and it almost feels as if they're baffled by the fact that the supporters can't appreciate that they've stuck in this game.
Yeah, and it's a strange one, isn't it? Because there are a lot of fans by the end of Ange Postecoglou's reign were bemoaning they were too open. Yes, they were great to watch, but they were conceding too many goals. Now it's almost the polar opposite. They've made themselves hard to beat, particularly away from home, but the Spurs fans are complaining they're not getting entertained. I think this is a massive transfer window as far as Tottenham are concerned, because they clearly need reinforcements, particularly at the top end of the pitch. They're letting Brennan Johnson go to Crystal Palace, so you can assume that they're going to replace him. I think they need to look at a number 9, because where is Dominic Solanke? I mean, there's almost no suggestion that he's going to get fit anytime soon.
But all of their attacking talents are out, it feels like, at the moment.
Yeah, but the Solanke one's a bizarre one, because he went for a lot of his career at Bournemouth not getting a single injury, and then as soon as he goes to Spurs, he got injured early on, and obviously this season has been a write-off so far. I do wonder if that's a result of him being overtrained, potentially, because I know at Bournemouth he just took days off when he wasn't feeling 100% physically ready, and obviously that was to their advantage, because more often than not he was available on a match day.
Well, they haven't been overtraining at Tottenham at the moment, because Thomas Frank said that is one of the reasons why they're not very fluent and not scoring enough goals, because there's limited training time and the right offensive players aren't just not available to him. It is a problem. He says he believes that they will get more fluent over time, and they need to, because their XG is 17th ranked in the league.
Yeah.
Their shots on goal are 17th ranked in the league. They're overperforming on all those metrics because they've actually got the 10th most goals in the league. But we had this sort of discussion when Daniel Levy left, that the sporting success was going to be the primary objective of the owners now. You know, it's the same owners, it's just a different guys, right? Don't be falling for the fact that it's different owners. It's not different owners, it's the same people. Are they going to invest heavily enough into finding someone who can score goals on a more regular basis? Do you think they've got the money to do that? Well, they've got the money to do it. Yeah. Of course they have. They're Tottenham. They're one of the richest clubs in the world. They've probably got the 6th best turnover in world football. They've got a massive stadium that generates billions of quid every year. They've got the opportunity to spend money. Will they? That's the big question.
Well, they promised they would, wouldn't they? So the proof will be in the pudding. It's a difficult window to do that. I mean, there's a lot of clubs in the market for a number 9, and there's a dearth of them around. We've been talking about it for some time. That's why Benjamin Šeško and Victor Gyökeres got big moves last summer. And at the moment, both of them probably are struggling really to hit the level they need at Manchester United and Arsenal, respectively. You look at West Ham doing business for a couple of strikers already in this window, and they're two players that most people have never heard of. So these guaranteed goal scorers are just not out there. So I think it's a tough window, but I do think Thomas Frank would expect some backing.
Okay, that was last night's game. Let's get into the big story of the week so far, and that is a new year, new broom. Chelsea have cleared out the manager's office. So who's next? Enzo Maresca has gone. Chelsea are going to have a new gaffer in the next few days. New year, new manager at Chelsea. Happy Blue Year, Enzo Maresca, as he is sacked as the Chelsea boss. Chelsea deciding that the position was untenable after 2 weeks of a fracturing of a relationship, which started with the worst 48 hours in his Chelsea career and ended with a run of 1 win in 7 matches. Alex Crook has been across this story. You and I were talking about this on our New Year's Eve show after he phoned it in after the Bournemouth game, said he was sick. He wasn't sick. We didn't think he was sick at the time. He was assessing his options. Chelsea were assessing their options as well, and he has gone. So who's responsible for this mess?
Well, I think Enzo Maresca would like it billed as him resigning, but the reality is managers don't walk away from big Premier League contracts. I think this is a decision that ultimately has been taken by Chelsea. You've mentioned the recent run of form. You've mentioned the outburst that he had after that Everton win. And actually, I think the caller we had on our show a couple of days ago suggesting that since then, this has been the longest resignation letter in football is is pretty much bang on. It looked untenable. Chelsea have decided it's untenable. And there are a few factors in this. They're not happy with the number of points dropped from winning positions, both in the Premier League and the Champions League, 20 in the two competitions combined. That's something that you've, as a Chelsea fan, have highlighted as a cause for concern. Had they not dropped all those points, they could be as high as second in the Premier League table. And I think we now also understand that the outburst he had after the Everton game was not so much aimed at the hierarchy, but actually aimed at the medical staff who were telling him how to manage the minutes of certain players, instructions we understand that he went against, and that didn't go down well in the boardroom. And there's also a suspicion at Stamford Bridge that he may already have held talks with Manchester City about succeeding Pep Guardiola. So it's a deadly cocktail, really, that in the end has spelt the end for Maresca.
Yeah, we understand that one of the main issues is that Chelsea, the sporting entity, think that the medical department should be listened to, should be followed, especially when it comes to player workload and welfare. But those decisions must be taken, Scott, autonomous from the manager. How on earth does that work?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I heard Carlo Ancelotti say not that long ago, if I'm being told that I've got to rest a player, if my eyes tell me I should, I will. If they tell me I won't, I shouldn't, I don't need to, then I won't. And all the outside noise of, one win in 6 and then one win in 7 after the Bournemouth game. And, this isn't happening. And yet he's being told who he can and can't play and who he's almost got to take off. And he's getting all the stick in terms of the substitutions. He's not totally blameless, of course, but you and I have both said he's a young, up-and-coming manager, very talented coach. Maybe could be construed as lucky of getting the job in the first place, but I think he's more than earned his stripes in the short time he's been there. And he knows what it will take to get that little bit further. Wanted a centre-half in the summer when Levi Colwill got injured, and he said, no, deal with what you've got. The youngest Premier League side average starting 11 ever. And everyone's expecting him to go and be a Premier League title challenger. So if he's now being told who he can play and who he's got to bring off, which I was with Crookie at the Bridge midweek, I didn't have a problem with any of his substitutions apart from the Cole Palmer one. But if that's almost forced upon him, then that's not management.
Well, it's going to be impossible for whoever steps into those shoes, and we'll talk about that very shortly. But Enzo Maresca, as you rightly say, is not blameless either. Some of the selection decisions in the first place have been a little bit baffling. But again, now we know that there is a huge influence from the medical staff about who he can and can't play. We don't really know whether or not he was picking the team at all, really, do we? And I suppose from his point of view, now that has come out, he can point to that and say, well, you keep having to go at my team selections and my substitutions, but truly it wasn't all to do with me. And the ones that he got wrong, he can turn around and say it was the medical department. The ones he got right, he can say, oh yeah, those ones were mine. But he has had a relatively successful time at Chelsea, in the fact that he won the Conference League, which he was expected to do. He got them into the top 4, which he was expected to do with the investment that he had. The one thing he did, which I don't think many people expected, was take them to the Club World Cup. Now, financially, that's been an absolute massive benefit for Chelsea. Marketing-wise, it's a massive benefit for Chelsea. Globally, it puts them on the world stage. It means they can wear that silly disc in the middle of the kit for the next 4 years. But also, it was an unexpected triumph, and financially that brings in a lot of extra cash. It's good kudos for the American owners to go and win the Club World Cup in America as well. So he has done a relatively good job, I think. But I think we've always said he is the physical embodiment of the squad. Young, a little bit naive sometimes, learning on the job. He has potential. Doesn't have a particularly great backstory in terms of coaching. He won the championship with Leicester, but that was his first job as a frontline manager. Arguably, could you say, Crook, that since he arrived at Chelsea, he's done well enough to inflate his own value in a move which would be similar to the way they want to behave with players, really? He's sort of almost elevated his own value and now moving on. Only Chelsea aren't going to get the benefit this time because no one's going to come in and pay 20 million quid for him.
Well, you say that. Obviously, we don't know the ins and outs of the discussion and the payoff that has been agreed. I would imagine there is a stipulation that if he takes another job, bearing in mind they believe he's been speaking to Manchester City, then they will be properly compensated. But you're right. I think his stock certainly is higher on the way out than it is when he came in. And we're going to talk about potential successors. And I was on air with Adrian Durham on New Year's Day, and he said, well, surely they can't possibly take the manager who's 7th in League 1. And I said, well, they took the manager from Leicester. So I don't think the business model is going to change, and I think they will continue to invest in young players and young up-and-coming coaches as well.
Well, the model is not going to change, and they're quite clear about that. They have no plans to change their model. There are only a handful of names in the frame for this particular job, and we'll get to that in just a second. But a lot of people focusing on the fact that Liam Rosenior could be the next candidate. In fact, I told Crook, in what month was it that I told you he was going to be the next Chelsea manager?
Well, it was a while ago.
September?
We did a piece in the transfer notebook as well, saying that Chelsea were aware of interest from other Premier League clubs and wanted to keep him in the system, as they see him as someone who ultimately could become their manager. I think probably this would be a little sooner than they expected, but I'm told the short list of potential replacements is very small. They expect to make an appointment pretty imminently, although probably not in time for Manchester City this weekend. And Liam Rosenior is very much one of the names in the frame.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be Liam, because he's someone who's worked in the system and he wants to further his career, and because of the fact that they think that they can probably control him a little bit. Scott, is that a little bit fair? I mean, not saying that they want a yes man in the job, but I think they want a yes man in the job, don't they, really, to be honest with you? I'm not saying Liam's going to be that, but I think he's very good at managing in this system, if that makes any sense.
Well, if Enzo Maresca's been told who he can and can't play, then what's going to change for Liam? So, there's no way that the likes of a Roberto De Zerbi or someone like that is going to...
They're not even in the frame. I think exactly. I don't even think there is a list, to be honest with you. I think they're just going to move Liam across. I'll be surprised if they don't.
Yeah, quite possibly. Look, I worked with Liam, excuse me, for a good few years at Sky. He's a wonderful human being, a really good person. You could tell he was tactically astute, and actually he's transferred that from the media to being a manager. But it's one thing being a manager of Strasbourg, it's another thing being a manager of Chelsea Football Club. And what do these owners want? Do they want trophies, and do they want them as soon as they can possibly get them? Or is it actually just, is it just a business? Is it just a hedge fund that they just want to try and bring in players that are young and then just sell them at any given time? If you happen to win a trophy along the way, then they're happy with that. Liam, I think, could easily be a Chelsea manager, but not right now. It's too early for him. And look, I know him really well, and he's a good guy. I'm not going to try and contact him and sort of find out what's happening. We'll find out soon enough. But I just don't see how things are going to change in 12 months, 18 months down the line. When he's not ready, he's not being given the ready-made world-class players to go on and win the title when everyone's expecting they should. He's learning on the job himself, and he's being told who he can and can't pick. This is just a continual, perpetual story, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. And that's the problem. And that's why if you're a Chelsea supporter, then it feels as if you're sort of almost the fan of a soulless entity that is more interested in trading players and managers for profit than it is for winning trophies. Yes, they have won 2 trophies in the last year, the Conference League and the Club World Cup. That is very good, because at the moment it's at the beginning of, or as you and I said, sort of like the 2nd or 3rd year into the project. And at that point, you've got to start doing something. And they hadn't up until then. They did. They won the Conference League. They won the Club World Cup. But can you see Chelsea winning the title? Can you really see that as a prospect in the near to mid-term future? The answer is no, because there is no senior players in the dressing room that can drag that team through. Now, I suppose you could hope that Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo and latterly maybe Trevor Chalobah might grow into those figures that can drag teams through later on in their careers. That might be in 2 or 3 years' time, if Chelsea keep hold of them for that long, because we all know that the main reason they've bought in some of these young players is to inflate their value and sell them on. Estevao is a prime example of that, right? So this is a kid who is going to be a Ballon d'Or winner. I've said that from the minute that he arrived at Chelsea. I said it before he turned up at Chelsea, because he's that talented. He's terrific. If you watch him, every time he gets the ball, there is a frisson of excitement that goes through the crowd, because he is so unbelievably creative and has this wonderful balance and an ability to weave past players, magic that Chelsea haven't had since Eden Hazard. He's going to be in the bracket with Hazard, Zola and Charlie Cook. He is. That is going to happen. But how long are Chelsea going to have him for? How long before Real Madrid say, oh, we'll pay 150 million for him? Because as soon as they do that, we know what the answer is going to be from Blueco. They're going to say, fantastic, off you go, son. We're going to reinvest it somewhere else, because that's what they want to do. So we don't see him win the Champions League at Chelsea. We don't see him win the Premier League at Chelsea. What we get is we get to develop him for somebody else. And then we flip him over and make a load of money out of it. I'm not sure that that's going to hold with the fan base that's used to winning a lot of trophies. And it's all right saying, well, it's a different model now. Everything's different. It's a different Chelsea in 2026 than it was in 2006. But the fans still want to win. The fans still want to be entertained. The fans still want to feel as if they've got a chance of picking up a trophy that they've been used to seeing Chelsea win over the last 25 years. They don't just want to flush it down the drain and see money flowing into the Blueco bank account, Scott.
100%, Sam. And, I know you're speaking from the heart as well as the head there. I just want to hear them come out and say, because when I say about winning trophies, obviously you say they won 2 trophies last season. I'm talking about the major trophies, the Premier League, the Champions League. Look, if an Esteval comes in and Real Madrid won him, then most Brazilian kids will want to go to Real Madrid. So I'd kind of half understand that. So well done for picking him in the first place. But this, even more so of hearing that Enzo Maresca's being told and being forced almost by the hierarchy to extremely listen to the medical science and not just to your eyes, that really worries me. That really worries me for Chelsea. And you mentioned the word soulless, and it feels like this is not football. This is not for the fans. It's not about the community of Chelsea. And the community of Chelsea is worldwide now. Chelsea Football Club should be chasing the top trophies. And the way they're going with this model, it's all about, it looks great on the balance sheet, but what are they going to win in the next 5 years?
Because if they really thought that they were about sporting success, Crook, they would have invested in Maresca. They would have invested in trying to keep him and shape him and build him into the top manager that they thought he could be when they hired him. But they don't really. They've proved their point that they want a yes man in the dugout, because as soon as he's spoken out against them, he's off. Like as soon as Poch spoken out against them, he was off. What they want is someone in there who's going to do as they are told within certain parameters. They don't want a big personality. I told Crook about this about 6 months ago. Enzo Maresca set up an Instagram account, right? Or his people did. And that was very quickly sort of put down or told, don't populate that too much, because they don't want him to become a big star. They don't want Enzo Maresca to be the big star of Chelsea. They want Chelsea Football Club to be the star, the players to be the star, so that they can sell them on and inflate their value. One of the issues here is that you've got a very odd ownership group, and the fact that you've got a lot of different voices in the top of the organisation, but there's one big main owner in Begdag Eghbali who owns the majority of the shares of Blueco, and he's the one who really calls the shots. And look, I don't know, Crook, you'll tell us more about what's happening in the boardroom, because I know you've got a close ear to the ground there. But I imagine that what we've said about the player trading, that's still very high on the agenda for Chelsea going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. The message coming out of Stamford Bridge when Maresca's departure was announced was very much, our model will not change. So whoever comes in is going to have to adhere to it. And that's why I think it does lend itself to someone like Liam Rossignol. I don't want to say that he's a yes man. I'm sure that he would rally against that. But I think he is someone who will follow instructions and follow the model. And you talk about whose decision this is ultimately, you're spot on. It's Begdag Eghbali. It was his decision to remove Mauricio Pochettino. And I think he's been the driving force behind this. Not that Maresca has helped himself at times. And again, I was in the tunnel at Stamford Bridge after the Bournemouth game, and half a dozen executives, the 2 sporting directors, Eghbali himself, came past me. They've been in the dressing room, as they are after every game. A lot of managers out there who simply will not tolerate that.
Only 2 sporting directors went into the dressing room after the game.
There may have been more.
What are the other 3 doing? Crikey. Obviously on a laptop somewhere, furiously scouting for somebody else to flip. Right, okay. I don't think there's much more to say about that, apart from Chelsea take on Manchester City at the weekend. Good luck with that, fellas. On the other flip side, by the way, of the aftermath of the Bournemouth game, Antoine Semenyo did his sort of goodbyes, didn't he, right at the very end, and waved to everybody, cried and cuddled everybody, and then Iraola said, no, he's not played his last game. I think he has played his last game, hasn't he, Crook, just to clarify?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, the transfer window is now officially open. Obviously, City are focusing on this game against Chelsea. Pep Guardiola was reluctant to answer questions on Semenyo in his press conference, but we know this deal will get done. It was just a case of finalising how much of the £60 million release clause will be paid up front and how much in instalments. I'd be surprised if Semenyo played against Arsenal this weekend.
And talking of Arsenal, statement victory for them in midweek. Scotty, I was there. 4-1 they beat Aston Villa on Tuesday night. And I think it's the first time since the opening day of the season that they've beaten a top 7 sides. But to beat them in that manner, I thought was particularly impressive. And hold on a second. I know, have we got it? One way or another. He'll get it right because he's flip-flopped again. The boy... He would definitely get right who wins the title, by the way, because he's now changed his mind once more. It was Liverpool. It was Arsenal. It was Manchester City. And now, after that 4-0 win, it is Crook.
4-1 win, by the way. You were there. So
4-1.
Get the score.
Sorry,
right.
I did. It's just that in the script in front of me, it just says 4-0 because
you anchor man?
Mistake. He's obviously went out.
Listen, I wasn't surprised that Arsenal won. I wasn't surprised that Arsenal won.
No, answer the question.
And it did get me thinking, do you know what? Quite possibly they could get this job done.
One way or another. Yeah. Flip, flop. So, what did you think, Scott?
Well, look, just touching on Villa, I was listening to you two in the morning of the game, and I was with Crookie. Look, Villa have done brilliant. I don't want to sound negative in any way. It's an amazing run they've been on, and they've got a fantastic manager. But I've said all along, Aston Villa finish in the top 4. That's a really good season. Obviously, try and win the Europa League. So in my eyes, they're never really in the title race or not come the end of the season. And I think that's sort of, in a way, put that to bed a little bit. But what I would say with Arsenal, I think that was a big win psychologically, not just in terms of the scoreline. Obviously losing at Villa and scraping past Wolves and own goals being scored and things being thrown at them. There is a danger of that kind of outside pressure building up. So for them, to beat Villa in the first place, and 1-0 wouldn't have mattered at all. You just get the 3 points. But to win in the way they did, I think psychologically puts them back on track. And it's amazing that listening to people, not just like Crookie, suddenly that, a week ago, they were under so much pressure and City are going to come and get you and they're going to overtake you. Now it's like Arsenal, they've got this cushion now. And my goodness me, it's amazing how one game can change things. All they can do, Mikel Arteta, is win the next game. And you and I both said there'll always be a sticky patch as long as you find a way to win the games. And it may be this game now where they can go on and not just win, but win very well and go on a really good performance-winning run.
Yes, let's see what happens. Okay, let's get into the relegation fight at the bottom of the table now. West Ham of the first of 2 massive 6-pointers this weekend. They take on Wolverhampton Wanderers. Well, they're going to have to improve their set-piece defending if they're going to get anything from this game, aren't they, Crook? Because West Ham take on Wolves, who have improved quite a lot, actually, under Rob Edwards. I mean, they're still not good enough to stay in the Premier League. And we had a Wolves caller, actually, ring us up on New Year's Eve and say, we're not down yet. And he gave us a whole list of positives about the way the club was being run. And quite a few people texted in and said, whatever he's drinking, we'll have that at midnight tonight. Listen, there's no sort of sugarcoating it. West Ham United did a much better 2026 than they did a 2025, Crook.
Yeah, they do. And actually, we've mentioned the transfer window open. West Ham are wasting no time in trying to get reinforcements over the line. A medical taking place for Pablo. He's a forward who's done well in Portugal this season. It's a fee of around £17.5 million. Not quite the sort of Premier League proven striker that I think West Ham's have been hoping for, but at least it's another attacking option. Adama Traore, I think that deal will get done as well. So actually that suggests, despite the noise we've heard, they are backing Nuno Espirito Santo because George Mendes is the agent of Pablo, who also happens to represent Nuno. And of course, Adama Traore, a player that he knows very well from Wolverhampton Wanderers. There's a possibility that at least one of those signings could be done in time to play in this game, because I think this is a real banana skin now for West Ham. Great point for Wolves at Old Trafford, building on a couple of positive away performances at Liverpool and Arsenal. So I think this is a much stiffer test for West Ham than it may have been 3 or 4 weeks ago.
What do you think, Scott? Because your club really do need to start putting points on the board. Otherwise, they're going to drop down the table very, very quickly and drop into the championship abyss before they know it.
Yeah, look, I like Nuno. He's made some strange calls when he first came in, and perhaps gone with. Remember when after the international break, he kept the players who were sort of there rather than the players who were off on an international break. And the only thing I'd say to that is they're on the international break or playing for their countries for a reason. They are the best players at the club, and I look at him and I think, yeah, he could definitely do it. But listening to Crookie, that doesn't fill me with a great deal of optimism, I've got to say. You know, you do need Premier League players, ready players who can literally handle the pressure of playing at the London Stadium, where the fans themselves are not at one with the ownership. They don't like the stadium. They're trying to get behind the team, but the team aren't giving them anything. And for me, I think January window is absolutely massive. I think the next 2 games are absolutely massive. The problem is, like the start of the season, they're now conceding those goals in set pieces. And you can practice as much as you want as a manager. If the players are switching off, there's nothing you can do about that. And the fact they're even going ahead in games as well and still finding a way to lose or not win, you know, that's a massive worry. It really is.
Yes, Wolves inching maybe towards a first possible victory. Imagine if they got that. Nuno Espirito Santo would be under serious scrutiny if that was the case, Scott, Crookie.
Yeah, I think, as it always seems to be the case with West Ham, there are differing opinions in the board. Some believe that he can turn it around. Some, I think, are more sceptical, which is why I think if they lose this game, then his position has to be called into question. He's not been able to provide the uplift they would have been hoping for, is he? That new manager bounce, which actually I think is a bit of a fallacy anyway, it more often goes the other way. It has not really been seen at West Ham, and the mood among the fan base is very negative. I think probably 90% of them already think they're heading for the championship.
It's not negative, is it? It's not even negative. It's apathetic. I feel so sorry for West Ham United fans. They're not that negative. They're just not bothered anymore. They're almost a bit like, we're done with it. It's just ridiculous. This, you know, we know what's happening here. It's going down. It's falling apart. There's nothing we can do about it. We've done our best to highlight these issues over the course of the last 5 years, and we're still in the same position.
But Sam, it would be an absolute shambles if, as Crookie's saying, it sounds like, you know, Nuno and George Mendes will be having a little bit of influence in the January transfer market. And if they lose the next 2 games, bring those players in and sack him. I mean,
well, that's West Ham, Scott.
Well,
yes, it is.
I don't want to say they deserve to go down if that's the case, because it's West
But
Ham.
it is.
I've played for the club, and I'm proud to have played for the club. But that's a recipe for going down. Simple as that.
Well, it is. Graham Potter brought in Carl McCauley. They oversaw the transfer window, and then they sacked them. That's what happens at West Ham. That is it. That is the way they operate. There is no clear recruitment strategy. There's no seriously thought out program of recruitment, which is why they've got the players they've got, which is why they hire the managers they've got, that seem to be short-term appointments to put a sticking plaster over whatever is happening at that particular time. You know, David Moyes did a brilliant job, but he did a brilliant job because he was David Moyes, a very experienced, gnarled old Premier League manager who knew how to manage this turbulent situation and negotiate the choppy waters of what happens in the boardroom there and still manage to deliver results on the park. He was never given the credit that he probably deserved for that. I think right now everybody's looking back and going, bloody hell, how on earth did he manage to get West Ham to win the Conference League, bearing in mind the way that club operates on a day-to-day basis? It's a real shame, because the way things are going at this moment in time, they are going to disappear into the Championship. And if that happens, there's no guarantees that they come straight back, by the way. Absolutely no guarantees that they come straight back. Jurgen Strand-Larsen might keep them up, though, Crook.
West Ham or Wolves? I don't think it's going to happen as far as West Ham are concerned. Speaking to people at Molineux earlier this week, they're using the big offers they turned down from Newcastle as a barometer. His price in this window, that'll be far too rich for West Ham. I think they're being a bit ambitious, looking in the sort of £60 million region anyway, Wolves. But there are other clubs at the table, Crystal Palace, who we mentioned earlier in the week, and Aston Villa as well. And I think both those moves probably would be better for Jurgen Strand-Larsen than jumping from one relegation embattled team to another.
The transfer window is open, and the first one we expect to be Semenyo. But there's been a lot of activity already, including Brennan Johnson on the verge of a move to Crystal Palace. It's a record move as well, club record move, 35 million quid.
Yep, Steve Parish putting his money where his mouth is, responding to quite loud calls from Oliver Glasner to provide more support when it comes to transfers. And I think this could be a good move for all concerned. I'm surprised that Tottenham fans have never really taken Brennan Johnson to their hearts, bearing in mind how many goals he scored last season and his role in that Europa League final win in particular. Thomas Frank hasn't seemed to fancy him this season. They've got most of the money back they spent on him. So it's one of those rare deals in football that seems to suit all parties. And Palace need the options because Eddie Nketiah is going to be out for up to 6 weeks, I'm told, with a hamstring issue. They've got other key players missing already. So I actually think this could be quite a busy window for Crystal Palace.
Well, it needs to be, because Oliver Glasner says they need to redress the balance from what happened in the summer. And Brennan Johnson, I was a little surprised, really, that they didn't make more of him at Tottenham Hotspur, Scott, after the top scorer last season, being the top scorer last season, scoring the winner in the Europa League final. But he seems to have fallen out of favour with Thomas Frank.
Yeah, and look, I know what Cookie's saying. You know, from a financial point of view, it's not a bad sell. But, you know, Spurs are not in a great place right now, and Thomas Frank's not in a great place right now. So why would you let one of your players who can score a goal? I don't think he affects the game enough. I think he's a finisher, even though he's not like a striker. You know, you put the ball in the right place for him, he can finish, to be fair to him, but he's not someone who will grab the game by the scruff of the neck. He would argue, well, that's not my job to do that. I think he's a very good player, squad player for Spurs. I'm surprised, really, the state they're in. And trying to turn everything around there, that they have let him go. But for Palace, I think it's a really good signing, a really, really good signing.
And a quick word on the West Ham striker hunt. It's not easy to find strikers, is it? I mean, Crook made this statement on New Year's Eve that the Premier League is littered with average managers and average number nines, which I'm sure went down really well in the corridors of Premier League dressing rooms and training complexes. But where are they going to get a number 9 from, Crook? West Ham, because they do need goals somewhere. I mean, they do have Callum Wilson, but they decide to use him only sporadically.
Or as I say, they're bringing in this guy, Pablo, from Portugal. I think he's got 10 goals in the Portuguese Premier League this season. But it's a big ask, isn't it, to translate that into a team struggling at the wrong end of the Premier League table. They've looked into the Championship at the likes of Josh Sargent and Norwich and Haji Wright. I know Coventry were very quick to say that he wasn't for sale. We've mentioned the price tag for Strand Larsen is potentially too high because they have spent a lot of money in recent transfer windows. They may not have spent it well, but it does hamper them PSR-wise. So, yeah, I'm not sure that West Ham fans are going to get the exciting signing that they would believe might give them a chance of staying up.
Where are all the finishers gone, Scott? Where are all the number 9s gone? I mean, Dean Ashton did a little bit of an analysis on this. He said back in the day when you had all of the great number 9s, it was because you had 2 strikers up top, and because you played off one another and you sort of almost shared a bit of the workload. Whereas now, the role of a number 9 is so very different. It's just basically you up there on your own, trying to occupy 2 centre-halves, hold the ball up, bring others into play, and hopefully, once you've done that, then get into the box and try and finish something. But ultimately, it might be them who finish it before you even get there. So it is a slightly different role now, but there's not many of them around, is there?
No, we've talked about this before, and you look at United and Arsenal needing that number 9, and neither of their two have sort of massively hit the ground running. I think Didier Drogba killed that second striker and the smaller striker who then had
and a few central defenders as well.
Yeah, I mean,
ate them for breakfast.
Absolutely everything, couldn't he? He could run the channels, he could hold the ball up, he could, drop deep, he could score goals, important goals, make assists, defend deep in set pieces, as well as score goals. So he was everything rolled into one. So the second striker almost had to morph into a wide player and score goals from there. Yeah, listen, Dino could still have done it. Dino could definitely have done the job, but there's not many top ones around. Everyone wants to be a number 10 or an inverted winger nowadays.
Yeah, all the little blokes are taking all the limelight, aren't they? I mean, Crook would be no good in football nowadays. It's far too big, far too tall, far too lazy, actually, because when we play football, he only ever wants to hang around up front by the goal, waiting to pop in the odd one in 8. Right, okay, that's it from us. We'll be back on Monday to review all the Premier League action. We've got Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest live on talkSPORT. on Saturday morning. Then we're round the grounds. Then on Sunday, we've got Leeds versus Manchester United, a bonus commentary for you. And then round the grounds in the afternoon with the Premier League action. A lot of it taking place on a Sunday afternoon. Now, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday next week, absolutely massive. So we'll have a big preview to that on Monday as well, because all those 10 games are live on the talkSPORT network, including West Ham against Nottingham Forest, which will be a relegation 6-pointer. And Arsenal against Liverpool on Thursday night, which will be tasty, very, very tasty. They're very tasty. Do you know the advert that came from? Do you remember?
I remember it. It was that... No.
Answers on a postcard, please, folks. Let us know, and we'll reveal all in the next podcast. Crookmeister, you've looked absolutely delightful today.
God, it's freezing, honestly. Look at you two in your warm bunkers. I'm sat at an empty football stadium. It's absolutely Baltic.
Nice to see you. I'm sorry we've kept you for so long. You seem so busy today. Just a couple more questions before we look at me, Joe. Right, okay, we'll be back on Monday to review all the weekend's footballing action. Have a good weekend and Happy New Year to you all.